Today we're going to be talking about CPI, the Consumer Price Index.
If we get a steaming hot CPI reading, you're going to see more horror on your screen.
The Consumer Price Index shows prices rose 8.2% year over year, higher than analysts expected.
CPI data comes out within 3 minutes, and it's expected to be quite scary.
Everything in their basket is higher, including dairy, the price of coffee, even the price of ice.
It's the CPI data report. Your job is not to predict, your job is to prepare.
What the definition of CPI? Why should you care about even understanding the CPI data? What is inflation doing to how much I'm paying for my housing, how I purchase clothes, can I afford to travel, how much are plane tickets now? CPI data is one of the key metrics that you do actually want to track.
Calculations made from that basket are used to make decisions that affect Americans all over the country.
And that's why the CPI is important. Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about CPI, the Consumer Price Index. Why you should care about that and why that's important, right? CPI ties into, kind of shows like which way inflation's going, which lets us know whether or not we're going to be or heading into a recession. Companies are looking at these numbers, looking at closely watching inflation and a handful of reports, and you should too. Olivia, do you understand what CPI is?
See, I didn't know about it until you said, Olivia, can you prepare an episode about CPI data? I was like, yeah, sure, no, I can do that. And then I was creating this episode, I'm like, what the hell is it?
If you care about all things like stock market, whether the stock market is going to go up or down, and you're shorting, you're figuring out when to buy back into the stock market, then CPI data is one of the key metrics that you do actually want to track. Let's just start with the basic definition of what CPI even means, right?
The Consumer Price Index estimates the change in prices for a basket of goods and services that represents the average household spending. Calculations made from that basket are used to make decisions that affect Americans all over the country. Decisions about adjusting tax brackets and benefits like Social Security and food stamps. And it's one of the indexes watched by officials at the Federal Reserve.
That's one way to say it, but how does this relate to you? Every month you pay for certain things, right? You pay for gas to get to work, go grocery shopping. So as all these things get more and more expensive, what ends up happening is that you now need more money in order to live. That in turn forces you to go to your employer and say, hey, listen, things are more expensive. I can either leave my job or you guys can pay me more. So the business starts to pay you more, and now their expenses now go up. Right, so now the business is like paying more, and then at some point things get super high where you get into the spiral. Businesses have to start to lay off because the workforce is too expensive. Goods and services keep on going up because you need more money. It forces the Fed to start to raise interest rates to try to bring down the cost of these goods and services and get us back to a normalized 2% inflation rate. And that's why the CPI is important.
The department in charge of the index, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS, looks at several categories, each given a different importance, to compute the month's percent change. Some of the most important categories are food, transportation, and housing.
When you pull that all together, housing is it's the biggest expense that we pay for out of pocket. Rent, your mortgage, that's going to be, a hefty chunk, more than anything else.
Housing, apparel, transportation, recreation, medical care, food, beverages, education, and other goods and services. So when you think of CPI, you think of this data being released, you could think of it in terms of these buckets, right? What is inflation doing to how much I'm paying for my housing? What is inflation doing how I purchase clothes? Can I afford to travel? How much are plane tickets now that inflation is going up? These are all the things that are also important for anyone who cares about personal finance and becoming financially free to also start thinking about taking housing into consideration, right? So one of the reasons why I want to focus on the housing piece, interest rates are high now. When we get out of this cycle, start saving for purchasing a house, the cost of rent and housing and how much you're paying for to live in your household go up. That's something you should be aware of because that directly affects you, and that's the largest chunk of what CPI actually is. Because look at this crazy ass headline. Company that makes rent setting software for landlords sued for collusion. RealPage worked with some of the nation's largest landlords to raise rent, says lawsuit. And so this company now takes all the data from their clients and shares it with a lot of these large companies, which in turn allows them to set rent prices, which aka keeps your rent high, right? There's something actively going on with these large corporations that's actually raising rents and how much people are paying, which keeps inflation high. Hey guys, if you like the content you're watching, there is a Patreon that you could subscribe to where you get more exclusive content. I will share my journey of how I've made money in sales, things I'm investing in, some of the pitfalls that I've made as it relates to investing in my career. I'll be sharing those with you so that you can totally avoid those too. So if that's something you're interested in, you can click the link below in this video and sign up for the Patreon. So now, let's just talk about how the BLS collects data for CPI that you end up seeing in these reports every single month.
The BLS gives each category its relative importance based on a survey of what consumers buy. Keeping track of all of those items people spend money on, and their price changes month to month, is the job of the BLS's price checkers. The agency employs over 450 workers who track prices for up to 100,000 goods and services and 8,000 housing units every month based on the survey of what consumers are purchasing. To make sure products they are price tracking haven't changed, they compare the product to a list of data points from the month before. Sometimes that list can be up to 11 pages. This process helps to ensure the CPI's accuracy. The BLS is basing those calculations off of an urban consumer paying out of pocket. The formula excludes non-direct spending, like payments from nonprofit organizations that provide services to households, Medicare and Medicaid, and employer-sponsored healthcare plans. But again, this is just an average. Inflation affects different people differently.
Everybody's affected differently. As you understand CPI, as you understand how prices go up, to look at your specific spending basket, right, the things that you spend money on weekly, and trying to figure out what you can actually cut, if that makes sense. If I'm someone who commutes to work, is a way for me to certain carpool. If I'm someone who's used to eating steak twice or 3 times a week, how do I cut back on that? Even though CPI captures all these different categories, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be affected by all these categories. You actually have some power understanding CPI data, because now you can see where you can actually cut back spending. Why should you care about even understanding the CPI data? Not only because you could start to curb your spending in certain areas, but also because it gives you one of the indicators on whether or not the Fed's going to actually raise interest rates, which could affect your employment. Gas is still going up. Housing is still going up. CPI numbers are super high. What that means for you is okay, I know the next time the Fed meets, if this trend continues on a month-to-month basis with the CPI data, I know that's going to push interest rates up, which may affect layoffs, which may affect employment, which may affect the stock market, or whether or not your stock's going to go long, or whether you need to short a stock. It affects a lot of other areas in the economy, and so it's one of the key things that you should keep a track on. Olivia, anything else?
I learned a lot today. For someone that didn't know what CPI was, I've learned a lot.
All right. So, hey guys, if you like content like this, you can subscribe. If you're on our channel, you can subscribe to our newsletter. You can like us on all the socials. All the links are below. With that said, we will see you in the next video.